Good morning. Morning. Okay. Morning, everybody. We will get started shortly.
Here you go. Here's
Okay.
the two things for online. There's a chat feature in the live stream of this Bible study. They can
Okay.
chat, and that's the text number.
All right. Okay.
But it is streaming now because it automatically starts streaming.
All right. So if they chat, then that comes to you?
Yep, if they chat, it comes to the computer.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right. Morning. Okay, if everybody can find a seat, we will begin. Can you hear me okay? Is it coming across in the back there? All right. Well, good morning to all of you. A beautiful fall morning out there, and it's a good day to be together. Let's open with prayer. Lord Jesus, in these next weeks as we gather together in this Bible study, we are going to look at times in our lives when we enter dark places, when we enter places we weren't expecting to enter, when we find ourselves ill at ease, when we find ourselves floundering to find the answers that we are seeking. Lord, in these times, be present with us and guide us with your word and with your strength and with your everlasting love. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So first of all, those of you who don't know me, I've been a member here at St. John's since 1992. But there's been a lot of turnover. So the people I knew then are not the people that I see now. Some of you probably were here. How many of you were here in 1992? Okay, there's a bunch. And I've been a chaplain at Froedtert Hospital since 1986. So according to my math, that's about 35 years. I retired from institutional ministries in 2006, and at that time Froedtert had a half-time position that they were looking to fill, so they hired me. And so since that time, I've been on the payroll at Froedtert Hospital and a part of the chaplaincy department there. So during those years, I started out doing some hospital ministry, nursing home ministry, mental health complex out on Watertown Plank, and county jail, did some ministry there. But more and more as I got to the point where I was working half-time, I've strictly focused on hospital ministry. And my focus at Froedtert is with oncology. Froedtert has 3 floors in the Center for Advanced Care, 7, 8, and 9, 32 beds on each floor. So there's over 100 beds there that are all oncology patients. So it's a large field. there are a lot of people there, a lot of things going on with them. So some of the things that we're going to talk about here are going to come from my conversations with people on that oncology unit. I also wanted to mention that we are online, and so hello to all of you who are online with us today. So there is a chat feature if you are online. And so if you want to text a question, the text number is 262-374-5957. Feels a little weird to me to be talking to people that are out there somewhere. So I don't know if they're in Wisconsin or where they are. But it would be interesting if we would get some questions that would come from the outside. And they might have some thoughts that we haven't thought of. So my intention with this course is I want this to be an interactive kind of discussion. So it's not going to be me giving you lots of information, but I'm more of a question person. I will put questions out there for you to think about, for you to respond to. And sometimes those questions lead to other questions. And so I very much want this to be an interactive discussion between myself and you. So we're going to go 3 Sundays through the 3rd of October. The 10th of October will be Mission Festival, so there'll be a little bit of break there in the middle, and then we'll have 3 more Sundays after that. If you look at the outline, you're going to say, well, what are we going to do for 6 weeks? Because there's nothing here. And that, again, these are more just kind of broad themes and ideas of where we're going to go. But we're not going to know until we get into what's going on with you as well as what's happening with me. So as we interact with each other, the only ground rules that I have is that we be respectful of one another. So sometimes as people are expressing their questions or their thoughts, they may not be thoughts that we are familiar with or that we are comfortable with, but I encourage you to allow that person the space and the time to say what they want to say. And it's my observation that as we do that, there's a lot of growth that takes place. So in my work as a chaplain, I do a lot of listening. And, you know, I'm not the wise guru who comes and tells the patient what they all need to know. I learn probably as much from the patients as they might learn from me. It's very much of an interactive thing. That's how I want us to interact with each other here, that we hear each other. So I want to begin by talking about insurance. How many of you have car insurance? Okay, looks like everybody that's got a car pretty much got car insurance. Home insurance, life insurance. So there's an insurance for everything, isn't there? And if you ever look at your budget, you spend some pretty serious money, don't you? You know, when I look at my budget, I'm like, whoa, man, that house insurance went up again. Car insurance went up, you know. It always seems to go up. And then when you try to collect, oh, I forgot health insurance. Yeah, that's kind of a big one, isn't it? So why do we have all that insurance? What's our intention by having all that insurance?
Well, we hope to never have to use it, but that if something goes wrong,
Yeah.
we have a backup plan.
All right, it's a backup plan. And really, I think that's what insurance is. And I think you're right. We hope we never have to use it. but it is there as a protection and as a safety net. So if you've got all of these insurances, you should be able to sleep at night, shouldn't you? No worries, I got insurance. So doesn't that cover everything? No. Okay, what doesn't insurance cover?
My soul.
Yeah, it doesn't cover your soul. You can still get sick. So, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Acts of God.
Acts of God, yeah. So there are those unexpected, there are those things that we didn't see coming. And so in spite of the fact that we try to control and we try to plan, we still can be unpleasantly surprised, can't we? And perhaps everybody who's here has had some kind of experience that reminded you of that. You know, I think we kind of live in a world of illusions. That if we have had good health, and if we have all of our insurance premiums paid, and we kind of are pretty good at managing what's going on around us, we kind of have that feeling that we are in this little bubble, and it's plexiglass and it's an inch thick, so we're all good. And we can live with that illusion for quite a while. But I think as we meet here and we talk about things, we begin to realize that no matter how careful we are and what we all do, things can still happen. So that's why I call this course a punch in the gut. Now, I'd like you to imagine that you're standing there and you're just minding your own business and you're not really paying too much attention to anything, and somebody comes up and they haul off and they punch you right in the gut. Now, you didn't expect it. You didn't see it coming. And I want you to think about what a punch in the gut does. So think about it as a sequence, that one thing causes another. So you kind of end up with a chain of events, a chain reaction. So the first thing is physical. When you are punched in the gut, it is physical. So what happens when you get punched in the gut? Physically, what takes place?
You feel pain.
Pain. Yeah, so there's a lot of pain. You lose your breath. So it knocks the wind out of you. Anything else physically that happens? So the pain,
Double over.
you double over. So again, that's just how your body reactions to that. So you may end up on the ground. You may end up flat on your back. So if you get the wind knocked out of you, again, physically, what is your body trying to do? Yeah, it's trying to survive. It's trying to get air. So you may find that at first you can't breathe. So all of that physical stuff also sets off a response. So what would be some of the emotions that come out of that?
Get very angry.
Angry, okay. So I mean, imagine that you're standing there and out of the blue this guy punches you in the gut. Your first reaction is going to be, hey, what did I do? What's going on? Why did you do that to me? So there's going to be a lot of anger there. You had your hand up?
Fear.
Fear, okay. Again, because if you can't get your breath and you don't know what's going to happen next, you don't know if that's going to be followed up by something else, and am I going to be able to get through this? Am I going to be able to overcome this? So you're going to be angry, you're going to be scared. Confused, because what in the world, what made this happen? So that kind of starts getting us in another direction there too. Go ahead.
Panic?
Panic, okay. And oh boy, any of you like being panicked? Something I try to plan and avoid as much as possible, but you know, that is not a good place to be.
Maybe guilt, like, what did I do to deserve this?
Okay, so now you're getting beyond the emotional into what I call the spiritual. So the spiritual are the questions. And so you cannot have a physical experience and an emotional experience without also having those questions. So, and one of the questions is, why is this happening to me? Okay, would there be another question that would kind of tail in with, why is this happening to me?
What did I do to deserve this?
What did I do? Yeah. And I think it's just automatic that, that most people, when something really traumatic happens to them, they are saying, what did I do? Why do you suppose that is? That is so often one of the biggest questions, that we're saying, what did I do?
I think our natural response is that there's always a cause and effect.
Yeah, cause and effect. Mm-hmm. And really that is true, isn't it, for most things? Most things are cause and effect, so what I do is going to cause or affect something around me. So I think that's a big part of that. Anybody have any other thoughts?
Maybe if your thought is, what did I do? If it's something I did, maybe I can do something to fix it.
Okay, so again, if it is something that I have done, then I also need to look at remediation. All right, well then if this is what I've done and this is what happened, then I need to change my behavior. I need to change the way that I react to things. So that why question is almost always present. Any other questions that you think might come out of this being punched in the stomach?
What if he keeps hitting me? What if he keeps hitting me?
I'm sorry.
What if he keeps hitting me? What if the punching continues?
Punching continues. Yeah, that's even almost too horrible to contemplate, isn't it, huh? When you're already flat on your back and you don't know if you can get back up and you're trying your best to recover, and then the punches keep on coming. That is kind of one of our worst nightmares, isn't it? So I call that the reaching your limits, where you have some ability to cope and to deal with things. And maybe you've seen this, I've got one nerve left and you're standing on it. That kind of, says to me that this is a person who has, they're just teetering on the edge. And so from that standpoint, you better not do one more thing to them, because that's going to really tip them over. Okay, anything else?
Why did God allow this to happen to me?
Yeah, so when you're asking why this happened, and you're looking at cause and effect, and you're looking at your behavior, you also are a person of faith. And so maybe for a lot of your life, he has given his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways so you don't dash your foot against a stone. So you kind of feel like God has protected you and kind of kept you away from some very unpleasant things. And now he's not. And what does that mean? That is a very deep question, isn't it? What does that mean that here the angels let me dash my foot against the stone? So, all of these things are, again, important, aren't they? And you see how all of this kind of gets kicked off by one thing. Any other thoughts that come to you?
I was thinking, what is the big picture of this whole thing? You know?
What's the big picture?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think, Mary, that is a really good thought. Because when it's happening to me, my universe is right here. But actually, the universe is much bigger, isn't it? So way beyond me and my circle and what's going on with me are other people, and then we get beyond the earth and there are other worlds and there are galaxies. Wow, this is really a big thing. So this kind of makes me think about the Job story. Because if you look at Job, it's very much about his world, and he is very focused on that. And obviously because it was so painful and so personal that his health, his family, his material things, everything was taken away. And so he's very focused on, I want to understand why God would do this to me. And one of the things you'll see in the story of Job is that God takes him beyond that. So at the end of the book, in like chapter 38 and following, what God does is take Job out of his small world and say, Job, have you looked at the creation? Have you looked at how it was designed and how it's maintained? And all of that kind of stuff. So by doing that, he starts to give Job a larger perspective. So I think one of the things we are going to do in our time together here is to, kind of try to work on that part. How do we get out of our own little circle, and how do we see what else is going on beyond me? So as we think about that, why is this happening to me? The interesting thing I hear from patients is, again, many of them are starting with that. Why did this happen to me? So they're kind of in that frame. But I also run into quite a number of patients who say, I don't ask why. And then they go on and they say, my question is, how do I fix this? So, okay, if you're a patient at Froedtert and you're saying, how do I fix this? So what's your response to that then? What do you do? You come to Froedtert. And you go on the internet and you find out that, oh yeah, there's a really good doctor there, and he specializes in the type of cancer that I have. So, all right, I'm going to get in. I'm going to find somebody who'll get me in. And he is going to pull out his magic box, and he's got all these different treatments, and he's going to take care of this. So I run into quite a number of people who come to Froedtert with, again, that expectation. And as Froedtert used to advertise, where impossible things happen. So if you're a cancer patient and you read that, you're saying, all right, hey, these guys, they're magic. Froedtert has changed that. Do you know what they say now? We do everything humanly possible. Now that's an important word, isn't it? Humanly possible. So what is Froedtert admitting? We can't do it all. All right. So evidently, enough of the doctors talked to the PR department and said, you know, stop it. You're setting up all of these impossible expectations. And now we got all these angry patients because we didn't fix what was wrong with that. So people who are focused on that idea of how do I fix this and where do I go to get the best possible result, some of those folks find out that when you enter into that world of fixing, well, you have no idea where that's going to go. So you start out with a chemo, and you do a few rounds of that, and everything comes down, the numbers come down, everything looks good. And so they say, yeah, okay, we're doing really great. We've almost got you into remission. And so your emotions are sky high, and you're saying, all right. And, you know, things are looking very good at that point. But then all of a sudden, you start having some symptoms. You have some respiratory problems. You have some heart problems. And then you find out that the chemo has damaged your lungs, or it has damaged your heart. And so now then they have to kind of back off of that because it was too hard on your body. So now they've kind of fixed it, but they've kind of also given you some new problems that you didn't have before. And so many patients find that getting into that medical world is really an up and down kind of situation. You're kind of doing okay and you're not doing okay, and it just kind of goes and goes, and then more complications come along. And then it may come to the point where the treatments don't work. So even if you're saying, what do I do to fix this? You may find out that road is not an easy road either. So I just want you to kind of think about all of those things. Think about those questions and think about those things that might possibly happen, just to help all of us to understand that when we get into this world where hard things are happening to us, it is not an easy road. There's going to be lots of struggle there. And I think it will be worth our while to, you know, kind of go into some depth on that. If you find yourself in that world and you're really struggling, then what is it that's going to get you through? How do you find the scriptures? How do you find the thoughts that God has for you? How do you find the support from fellow believers that will get you through all of that? So any other thoughts or questions on any of this? Yeah.
Well, getting back to the big picture, if we're stuck in the Swilla stuff right now, but God knows the big picture. He knows what's gonna, we don't know, but he does. So therefore, we basically have to trust in him and see where, and follow him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, Mary, what you are laying out there too. So God knows the big picture. We don't. You'll notice that there's a tension there, isn't there? So because we don't know, and because we are floundering, and we are searching, we are asking questions. In that tension, I think that is really where the rubber hits the road. Because what do we do with that tension? So sometimes you can say to yourself, well, because I don't know what God's plan is, I can just give up. Okay, fine, I quit. I don't know, I don't care, I'm angry, I'm depressed. So we can just kind of drop out at that point. I think what our God hopes is that even though we don't know, what he's hoping is that we won't give up. What he's hoping is that we will keep searching, that we will keep talking to him. So again, when you think about prayer as conversation, a parent really worries when their child stops talking. That's when I get scared, is when they go in the room and they slam the door and they won't communicate. That's the scariest time. So if they're mad at me and they yell at me and they say all kinds of things that may be hurtful to me, I'm good with that, because we still got a connection. We are still going back and forth. So I think that is a key thing here, is that we trust and we keep at it. Remember when Jesus said, ask and it will be given you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened unto you. Again, you'll notice that there is a sequence there. So again, what Jesus is saying is don't give up. So you can ask, and if that doesn't work, you can pound on the door. But you keep at it. And eventually, you will see what God wants you to see. Hey, we got something? No? Okay. So, am I back? No? Saw me sitting there, breathing heavily. And obviously she was concerned. And she said, should we go to the emergency room? And I said, what good would that do? A typical male response. So, of course, Jean didn't listen to that. And she went to grab her phone. And she heard a thump and came back, and I was on the floor. I had collapsed. So she dialed 911 and the rescue squad. We live about a half mile from the fire station in downtown Wauwatosa. It's not, not too far from Tosa East High School. So they got to the house in, 5 minutes maybe, a little less. And so the first thing they did is cut off my nice clothes, which, again, I have no memory of. But they started working on me. Did they do CPR? No? Okay, I was still conscious at that point.
I asked, can you hear me? And you kind of said yes, but it was very faint. And they were asking me all kinds of questions about your health history, like, you have a heart issue, or were you diabetic, and whatever. They were concerned about a seizure.
They were concerned about what?
A seizure.
A seizure, okay, all right. All right, so they're asking the usual medical questions. And so then they trundle me off to Froedtert. All right, when you get out to Froedtert, then again, you're going to end up in the trauma room. And so then they've got all these people standing around you, and each one is responsible for a certain segment of what's going on. They're trying to assess. They're trying to figure out what's going on. So Jean, of course, being a nurse, is in the trauma room. Now, for me, I would wait out in the lobby. But she's in the trauma room. And you know why, because she wants to make sure they're doing everything that they need to do. So if I'm a doctor, I'm kind of like, get that lady out of here. But just supervised. All right. But they go through that assessment thing. And so while they're doing that, then at some point there, I went into cardiac arrest. And so when you go into cardiac arrest, your heart stops. And the reason that happened to me is because I had a blood clot. So I didn't know that, but it evidently was in my lower left leg, down kind of just above my ankle. And perhaps as I walked down the steps, that might have jarred that, and so it went. So the first thing that the clot does is it goes to the heart, and then the heart pumps it into the lungs. So when the heart pumps the clot into the lungs, you end up with what they call a pulmonary embolism. This is not a good thing. Many, many times, a large pulmonary embolism is fatal. So again, depending upon where you were and what kind of medical care is available to you, there is just nothing that can be done for that. So the lungs with the embolism cause the heart to stop, and so then they're doing CPR. And so what I've been told, again, I'm not aware of any of this, is that 3 times my heart stopped, and 3 times they had to resuscitate me. One of the things when you do that, when the heart isn't working, what does that do to other systems in the body?
Some of oxygen?
Yeah. So again, if the blood is not moving, then there's no oxygen. So where's the place in the body that you especially don't want that to happen? In the brain, yeah. Because the brain is the most important organ with all of the different things that it does. And so as my heart stopped these 3 times, and then they're doing the CPR and they're breaking my ribs, because the doctors told me afterwards, if we don't break your ribs, we're not doing it right. And I'm like, okay, thank you, I guess. But they said to Jean then, we don't know in those down times when the heart wasn't beating, we don't know how much could have happened to the brain. So there might be some brain loss. There might be a loss of function there. So again, it's a whole scary scenario, isn't it? And so all of this stuff is going on, and I don't know how long that took, but 8:30 Sunday morning, then I'm in the trauma most of the day. They're kind of working back and forth there. Couple hours. And then from there I went to intensive care. So they had me on a ventilator to assist me with the breathing. Then the other thing they did was put in this clot-busting chemical. It's called TPA. So people with strokes and situations like mine, that is a standard thing. We've got to get that in there. It will start to break down the clot, and then again, that gives you some chance of survival. So they were doing all of that. They got me in intensive care. They figured out then that they could take me off the ventilator, so they pulled out the tube. And then at that point, the nurse was talking to me, and she said, "Would you like something to drink?" And I said, "Some brandy would be good." And then my wife knew that my brain was okay, yeah. relatively speaking. But that was then kind of, where things started to improve. But it wasn't until Monday evening, about 8:30, when I'm on the floor in a regular room, that I really came to. So it was about 36 hours there where I didn't know what was happening. And I came to, and I look, and there's my sons, my oldest daughter, my wife. My daughter from Arizona was not able to get there, but most of my family standing around the bed. And I saw the look on their faces. I saw their shock and their concern. But what really struck me was the love. I saw that they loved me. And in my own heart, what I felt was how much I loved them. And that just the immediate and the most powerful thing that happened to me at that moment is just incredible. Now, I'm German, and again, with the culture, Germans are not very demonstrative. They're not very verbal. And so if the guy tells his wife on the wedding day that he loves her, that's pretty much it. That's it, yeah. So on their 50th, he'll turn to his wife and say, nothing's changed. Yeah. It's what I said. I stand by it. But that experience kind of broke down that cultural thing in me. And it made me say, why haven't you been more verbal? Why don't you say something if that's really what you're feeling? So that was kind of my immediate thing there. In the days that came after that, what I found myself kind of, again, going over and gnawing on like a dog on a bone is, where was I? When I was going through those cardiac arrests, where was I in those 36 hours? So I wondered, did my soul leave my body? You know, some people talk about that they're above their body, they're on the ceiling, and they're looking down at the people that are working on them. So I kind of wondered about that. And if my soul was out of my body, then what? So my question really was, I was in free fall. And when you're in free fall, and when you don't know what's going to happen, and you're not in control, then what? Where are you? So that became a very nagging and important question to me. That was kind of my spiritual search at that point. And so over time, as I'm thinking about things and reading things, the psalm that really spoke to me was Psalm 139. And I just want to read that portion that really spoke to me. O Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord. You hem me in behind and before. You've laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. I have begun to see how profound those words are. Because as I was wondering where I was in that free fall, in that time of unconsciousness and unawareness, God was there, wasn't He? So that intimacy of how well He knew me, that He knew my thoughts before I even thought them, and that no matter where I would go, so if I went down, if I went up, if I went out, it didn't matter because He was around all of that, and He was within me. So that idea that He had me, that He had my back, that I was in His hands, that was just tremendously profound to me. So that begins to give us that idea of how much our God loves us. He's got it all covered. Now, as you were saying before, God knows and we don't know. And so, there is that space in between. So I got all these questions. I am floundering. I am gasping for air, literally. And God is like, I got it. You're okay. So one of the things is that I used to worry about dying because I thought I'd want to do it right, whatever that is. And, and I came out of that realizing he's the one. He's got it. So I don't have to worry about how I'm going to do it or how it's going to come out. But He's got me. So that love that He has for me, it is just so vast. You can't wrap your mind around that. And that love that He has for me, that love is in me. He has given that love to me. So when I looked at my family and I saw how much I loved them, that was God's love in me and God's love in my family. So again, that got me to thinking again about why don't I say something? So a couple of weeks after, when I was in the nursing home and when I was trying to recover, one of the side effects of the blood clot is that it did a number on my leg. So I ended up with this huge swollen leg, and there was blood blisters and hematoma and all kinds of things. And I could barely put weight on my leg. It was so painful. So I had to get some nursing home therapy. So as I'm in the nursing home, my family came and we had pizza, and I thought, okay, I'm going to become verbal. And I probably shocked them because they weren't expecting Dad to get all gushy and emotional. But I did. And I went around the table and just talked to each individual. What was it about them that I loved? What was special to me? I just affirmed them. And I've been trying to continue to do that as I have the opportunity. But I think that's where you begin to see when something happens to you that, again, changes you. That's sort of a crossroads moment. It does change the way that you look at things. And I think the overriding thing is that I thought to myself, if I would have died, it would have been all right. I had a wonderful life. God had given me many opportunities. I loved my ministry. I loved the life that I had with my family. So if I would have died, that would have been all right. But it was all right that I was still alive. And I just kind of saw everything a little more sharply. I just noticed things more. And now I think every day is a day of grace. And I thought about if I got my strength back, should I retire? And I thought, well, I want to try. So I was ready to go back to work the 1st of April, and then COVID, of course, had really started to kick up, and Froedtert was almost on lockdown at that point. And my doctor said, hey, you know, you had a pulmonary embolism, so you've got respiratory issues. I don't want you out there. So he said, hold off. So I held off until the 1st of May. But, yeah, well, you know, I'm stupid and crazy. What can I say? My kids were not thrilled that I wanted to go back to work. Probably Jean not so thrilled either. But when I went back, it just struck me of how it was different. Because now when I sat with the patient, I had a deeper understanding of what they were experiencing. So again, the interruptions, the lack of privacy, the loss of dignity, I was much more aware of how much that was going on with them. And so because I could see that, then I was able to really key into that. And so when I would see their anxiety, when I would see their frustration with the door opening one more time, and one more poke, and one more blood lab, when I saw that going on with them, I could really key into that and say, yeah, it really stepping on your last nerve, aren't they? And when I could key into that, then we connected more deeply too. Then they said, okay, I want to tell you what else is going on with me and what else I'm feeling. So the relationships just became more intimate, and people started to talk more about what they were struggling with their questions. So my ministry in that last year and a half has been the same and yet totally different. And I treasure that, and I thank God for that. So we are about at our time here. Any other questions or thoughts before we close for today? Mm-hmm.
Given your years in the ministry, were you surprised by your reaction after you had this episode?
Yeah, and given my experience, and was I surprised? I guess you don't know what's going to happen to you.
I mean, were you surprised about your reaction?
Yeah.
How you reacted to it?
I don't know. It's really hard to, because how should I have reacted, I guess is another question. I think in my training, we were trained that how we should react is that we show very little emotion. We suck it up. We say, yeah, it's all good, nothing going on here. My faith is fine. So I think sometimes that may be a reaction that we're looking for, but this is what I was feeling. So I think I want to encourage all of you also, if you come to a moment where you are just kind of blown out of the water and you're a little bit all over the place and you don't know exactly what you're feeling or thinking or what your questions are, that's all right. Why wouldn't you? Isn't that normal? So I don't think that that's necessarily an unchristian response or a lack of faith response. I think that's just where you are. But again, you're moving. You know, you're not stuck there, but that's where you are. But you are trying to get to a firmer ground. So that old hymn, "Shifting Sands," you know, that's kind of where you're on sand and you're trying to get to the rock. So I don't know. I think maybe some pastors would say, "Hey, Steve, you didn't do a very good job there." But I don't know. I'm not going to judge that. That's just where I was. But I like what happened to me. I like the insights that came to me. So I think as we go on from here, let's kind of explore that of, you know, what is okay and what can we be feeling, and, you know, instead of judging it, to experience it and just to see where that leads us, and will that get us into the place where God wants us to be. Okay, so let's stop there today. And then next week, I want you to be thinking about stuff that's happened to you, and maybe that you'd be willing to share with the class. And I also have some patient cases that I want to discuss with you too. So let's go with that next week. So long for today.